up? What up? Welcome back to Two Goat Show. We're your hosts, Miriah and Steph. Steph, happy Two Goat Thursday. Good to see
We
you.
back.
How you doing?
We back. We back. Or should we say we back?
We're buying, okay?
Oh my god.
How you doing, Steph? Good to see you.
I'm good. I'm good. I'm not too bad. How about you?
Good. I'm hanging in there. Chat! Happy Two Goat Thursday. Good to see you guys. Hope everybody's had a great week so far. The weekend's almost here. We get to watch some playoff football, although, our team ain't there. But let me tell you, Steph, it was, I hate, obviously, our team not being there, but it was a nice, relaxing weekend of watching football for me. I didn't have to be stressed out, didn't have to be sick to my stomach, didn't have to be worried about, okay, who the 49ers going to play, all this shit,
Yeah.
it was just a nice, welcome little break for once. It was a stressful season. So it was just nice to be able to enjoy good football. And hopefully this week we get to see even better football. But yeah. Chat, what up? Don Throwback, what's good? Sin, Rob, Ty, what up? What's good? Hope everybody is well. So I figured, we'll look a little bit and talk a little bit about the future. Obviously, we know the 49ers are interviewing some coaches. So I want to get your thoughts on some of the coaching candidates. And then maybe some who you're thinking at pick 11. I heard, there's a group of faithful, which I'm kind of surprised because it's been a while since we've had, obviously last year we had a first round pick for the first time in a while, but it was still at the very end of the first round, right? So, we actually get a decent pick this year. And so I'm surprised I'm hearing a lot of faithful that have been talking about trading out of that pick. So I want to get your thoughts on that. If, you think that would be a thought as well. To me, I'm picking, we need a difference maker, somebody that you can get that high in the draft. And I hope to not be picking that high in the draft again for a long time. So, but up to me, I'm drafting the best. I don't know best player available, but we'll get into it. But let's start at the coaches. Now, I was listening to, when I was making this list for the other day for my entire show about, the coaches the 49ers have interviewed, I didn't know, and I guess I wasn't even thinking at the time, because I'm looking and there's a Lions coach for special teams, a Lions coach for DC. And I'm like, okay, Lions, where's everybody else at, right? Mm-hmm. Well, obviously they're in the playoffs, but I'm thinking, well, the Lions are in the playoffs too. So, it wasn't clicking to me at the time when I'm making the list that the Lions had a first round bye. So their coaches couldn't interview and the other coaches can't interview yet, they're busy in the playoffs. So, before we get into the actual coaches that, the team did interview, looking at the teams that are still left in the playoffs, are there any, obviously besides the Lions, who the 49ers have interviewed from, are there any coaches from any of those teams that you think the 49ers would even be interested in interviewing? When, they are able to interview? Are there any names from those teams in the playoffs that stick out to you for DC or for special teams?
I mean, that sticks out, not a whole lot. I think Deshea Townsend was who they interviewed for defensive coordinator was interesting, right? I do like that they're going to, someone who's under Aaron Glenn, who's had a, pretty great season with the Lions, even with all the injuries they've had. I think they've still been able to do, for the most part, a lot of what they have intended to do and want to do on defense. And now they're finally starting to get some guys back. But yeah, I mean, aside from that, though, I don't think there's really any like big names out there that that catch my eye. Plus, the thing is too, you're like the 49ers are looking for someone who already has defensive coordinator experience, and
Mm-hmm.
who has defensive coordinator experience are defensive coordinators currently. So I don't
Right.
think anyone's looking to make a lateral move to, be hired by the 49ers, right? So yeah, that kind of just settles it even further that no, I don't think anyone from those teams
Yeah.
makes sense for the 49ers. Like I think the only time like where people may consider lateral moves, maybe special teams, because it's one of those positions. I don't know. I don't feel like there's not a lot of growth in in being a special
Mm-hmm.
teams coordinator. But there are raises, right? If another team is interested in you. But and like for example, the 49ers with special teams are interested in Jet Modkins, who's the assistant special teams coach for the
Right.
Lions. The Broncos got eliminated, so like they did interview Chris Banjo, who had the same title with the Broncos, assistant special teams coach, and so now technically, like if they wanted to, they could hire him, but they don't have to wait any longer. Lions, Modkins is probably the only one they'd have to continue to wait on if that's who they wanted. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of names out there, but no one that's currently in the playoffs that I'm like, oh, we have to wait for this guy.
Yeah. Okay, let's go back to special teams. You hit there on Chris Banjo, obviously Jet Modkins. They also interviewed Chris Tabor, who was former Panthers special teams coordinator, and also their interim coach, head coach at a time. Is there anybody else that you would be interested? Any of those names that interest you? Like, who are you thinking as of right now for special teams? Because I know Broncos, like looking at Chris Banjo, like Broncos like have ranked around 13-ish, 15-ish, kind of around, like not shitty, but not the greatest, but a lot better than we've been.
Yeah, yeah.
The Lions seem to be pretty good, all around at everything right now. So I wouldn't think, like I don't know much about that Jet Modkins, but the Lions special teams isn't terrible either. Panthers, obviously, people see the Panthers and it's just like, do we really want somebody that came from the Panthers, like the shittiest team that's of the NFL for the last how many ever years? I don't know. But are any of those names jump out to you? Any other names? Like, were you looking for special teams?
Yeah, I actually like all of the names that have been brought up so far with special teams because they're all like, even if they're not good teams, the special teams of those teams have been good. So like as far as EPA goes, with special teams this year, Lions are third, I believe. In DVOA they were first.
Nice.
And then what's the other team?
Broncos.
Broncos. So the Broncos were, let's see. I'm just looking at the graph right now where the Broncos weren't very good in EPA this season, but I think in DVOA they were okay. Oh wait. Hold on, sorry. I'm trying to figure. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong graph. Okay, so actually, yeah, this season the Lions are third in EPA. The Broncos are 8th in EPA. And I think they were like 4th in DVOA this season. 49ers were 32nd. You could probably guess that much. In EPA, the Panthers were 26th. But I've seen so many people like say good things about Chris Tabor. So,
His name sounds familiar. Like I don't remember hearing like bad things about him in the past, like,
which is good,
so,
right?
yeah.
I think they're in kickoff and punt coverage, like they've been okay. So yeah, I mean, I think they're looking after guys who have been historically good. So I think that's That's a good thing to me. And hopefully they hire one of those guys. And like you said, it can't be any worse than, what we had with Brian Schneider.
Right.
And hopefully this next guy is going to be the guy that they don't have to replace in like a few years.
Kali and I think Ty as well had brought this guy up from the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Because the Cowboys, right? I remember them, at least through the first half, and when we played them, up until that game, they had been really good on special teams. And we know the Cowboys obviously are doing a rehaul of their coaching staff. So I would imagine, unless that guy follows Mike McCarthy wherever he goes, that he'll be available. What do you think about John Fassel? I don't know. Fassel.
That one's definitely interesting to me as well. Currently, he's still hired by the Cowboys. So I don't know how that works. Like, I think the 49ers would have to ask the Cowboys for permission. If they are interested in him, maybe they're just waiting to see if he does end up going somewhere else, or if they hire a new coach and they let him go. Or you don't know, like maybe the new coach that comes in wants to keep him, right? Like, oh, like you've been here, X amount of years already, like you've been pretty good. I'm cool keeping you, right? Like, so that could happen as well. But, I definitely wouldn't be opposed to the 49ers looking into it. I mean, just because it's one of those other teams that have been, historically pretty good with special teams. I mean, this season it was kind of the only thing they were good at. So, we could use some of that if it's available. And yeah, he could follow Mike McCarthy as well. It's another possibility, but I think it's just worth something that the 49ers should at least, just hand them your business card.
Yeah.
I
agree. I mean, Kyle talked about usually not being able to take advantage of this time because he's still in the playoffs, so we get like the leftovers, whoever's left over for, the choices. So, I mean, actually use this time and take advantage of it then, like interview everybody that you possibly can that's worth a shit, like, why not? What does it hurt? Like,
at the rate they're going right now, like they're going to end up hiring someone after the Super Bowl anyway.
Yeah. So
like taking that sweet ass time.
Let's talk about DC. Now, this is the first time we've actually heard Kyle, talk about to us that he's open to some type of changes. Maybe, he didn't say not necessarily a scheme change, but a little switch up maybe. We'll see. But, normally it seemed like he was always just stuck to, like, I want somebody to come in, run what we got. So that kind of opens it up, branches it out for maybe to get some names in here to interview that we haven't, thought of in the past. So far we have obviously Robert Saleh, who seems obviously to be a favorite. But I do have some concern with hiring him as well. But he's also interviewing for head coaching jobs, as well, with the Jags, the Raiders, the Cowboys. So we'll see how that goes. And then Kyle did mention that they're going to interview Brandon Staley. So take that for what it is. They also interviewed Lions DB and defensive pass game coordinator. And you had mentioned this earlier, Deshae Townsend. And then there's also some names being thrown around, obviously that they haven't interviewed yet. But those names like Gus Bradley, Jeff Albright, Dennis Allen, kind of give me your thoughts on the names, that they've interviewed, on, the other names being thrown around, maybe some names out there, other people that you might be interested in. And then with Saleh, my whole thing is like, I love him and I would love him to come back. Right. But the thing is that you obviously, as a coach, you want to be a head coach. Like, duh, right? Like, why would you not want to have your own team? So if he doesn't get one of these head coaching jobs right now, and he comes back to the 49ers, are we in the same position again next season? Like, I don't want to keep going through this every freaking season. Like, and we finally have Kyle open to making changes. Do we want to bring somebody in that does like that's all about the old system. Like, I don't know, like, do we want to take advantage of Kyle actually being open to making changes and freaking change it? Or are we bringing in somebody that runs the same Seattle defense? Like, not even necessarily with Saleh, but like with Gus Bradley, for example, like, what's he known for? The Seattle fucking Legion of Boom, right? Like, I don't want to just be stuck with that same shit. Like, I feel more confidence in Saleh being able to change and switch things up and grow and adapt than you get one of these 90-year-old fucking dinosaurs in there that's done this same thing their entire career, right? And then we're going to expect them to come in and do something different, like be able to adapt and switch up. And like, I don't know. But like, I love Saleh, and by all means, I would love to have him in there. But that's my only concern, is that we're stuck doing this again next season, which it could happen with anybody, right? It could happen with any of these guys.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't know. But shit, if he doesn't get one of these head coaching jobs, of course, I would love to have him in there. But I hope Kyle's just not waiting around for Saleh, and then he does get a head coaching job, and now we're stuck with whatever suds at the bottom of the bucket, right? Like, we're in the same shitty situation. So thoughts on DC, Steph?
Yeah, so a lot to unpack. I think the Kyle Shanahan quote on like scheme, I think, is taken a little bit out of context, because I think what people were grabbing from that quote is, talking about changing schemes, but he was really talking about having the ability to adjust,
right?
Your scheme, and not so much the scheme, but like adjust things to the personnel that you have available to you, and just what offenses are doing against you. Like, you have to be able to adapt and adjust to those things. So that's mostly what he was talking about. And Nick Wagner's piece on ESPN that came out, I think it was like earlier this week, right? Mentioned that Kyle Shanahan prefers a defensive coordinator with existing experience, which I think we could have guessed that after the Nick Sorensen debacle, and familiarity running a 4-3 scheme. So he's still preferring that. So as far as that goes, I think there's still plenty of candidates available who fit that for the 49ers, especially right now, especially with them being early, like we said, in being able to get to this pool of all of these coaches that are available, which, as Kyle admitted, is part of the reason that they moved on from Nick Sorensen, because they were like, oh, we're starting to see some of these guys who are available. Okay, we could definitely upgrade. We're good with you, Sorensen. Mm-hmm. So as far as Saleh goes, I have the same concern as you, that like he is already getting head coaching interest from other teams again, so soon after the Jets stint, that I think it's enough for me to feel like, okay, like he would only be here a year, even if he didn't get a head coaching cycle this time around, right? Because I don't think his time with the Jets was so bad and so atrocious that teams would be turned off from him. Like, clearly, I mean, he's already getting the interviews, mm-hmm. right? So
and the thing too, they fired him and placed the blame on him, and we're still ass afterwards. So had they fired him and then all of a sudden went on to win the next 8 whatever games were left in a row, like, okay, then maybe some teams are like, oh, I don't know about Saleh.
Yeah, like he was the problem.
Still just the shit.
Yeah, exactly. So like it didn't look so much like Saleh was the problem there. And yeah, I mean, I don't think he was, right? So I think teams are going to continue to be interested in him. Like, I would be happy if Saleh was back, but I don't think I'd rush to make him my first choice, right? For the reasons that we mentioned. Because I would prefer, and I continue to slam the table for a defensive coordinator who is going to be here long term, who has been a head coach before and was so bad that like nobody is interested in making him a head coach again.
Not you, Brandon Staley.
Yeah, not Brandon Staley. But yeah, so hopefully, there's someone the 49ers could find with that. Now, my worry is that I think right now the 49ers top two choices is one, Robert Saleh, and I'd put Jeff Ulbrich as a second one. But Jeff Ulbrich is getting, some interest.
Yeah.
At least like he interviewed for the Jets head coach position, right? Which he's the interim currently, or he was the interim. And so maybe that could just be like an out of respect kind of thing. I don't recall if Ulbrich was getting head coach interest from any other teams. Maybe one other team. I don't remember, but that's my. It was a defensive coordinator position that another team was requested an interview, I think, for Ulbrich. And so to this point,
Falcons interviewed him.
Yeah. So yeah, like if Ulbrich is one of the 49ers top choices, which that's what all the beat writers are saying, or like that's like they have been singing this for like the past year that Ulbrich, like I think that they'd be interested in Ulbrich, blah blah blah. Like they keep saying that, so I'm like, okay, he must be like a top choice, but they haven't even requested to interview him yet. So that's a little mind-boggling to me. I don't know what they're waiting on. They could interview him even if he is the interim coach, I think. So yeah, I don't know what's going on there. As far as like the other guys like Deshae Townsend, again, I like that because it's a good team. I think a good strong scheme. And he does more than just be a DB coach. He's a passing game coordinator as well. So like I think he has an eye for the entire game and how, offense, defense, like all impacts. So that one's interesting to me, but I don't know if the 49ers have legitimate interest there, or if it was just kind of a, let's see what he says kind of thing. And then another thing that Nick Wagner mentioned was Dennis Allen, right? Who I think would fall under the umbrella of, former head coach. He got fired by the Saints. That didn't go well. So, I think maybe he'd, at this point, be a long-term defensive coordinator, right? I saw someone else say, I think might have been a Kosh. I don't remember who said it, but, Dennis Allen maybe could be waiting for another coach to get hired and join his staff. Oh, Ben Johnson, I think, or something like that. So, like, that's another thing, too. Like, Dennis Allen could have other options. But, again, like, we haven't even heard that the 49ers have requested to interview Dennis Allen. So, like, yes, Nick Wagner mentioned him, but we haven't heard anything besides those two names. And then, Brandon Staley, which, Brandon Staley, I know everyone heard that, Kyle will interview him and – got a bad taste in their mouth, but I think that was out of respect too. Like, I don't think they're legitimately thinking of making Brandon Staley
like, could you imagine if Kyle didn't like even offer, like open that up for him to interview? Like, that's pretty rude. Like somebody being in your building already, like, been a DC, like his entire family, like
it'd be rude. It would be
like,
rude.
No.
For sure. So yeah, I mean, I worry also with Saleh that the 49ers are waiting for him. And that's why, like, we haven't heard them interview any other candidates. Are you going to wait till Saleh officially takes a head coaching job to then be like, oh, shoot, like, okay, we should probably start interviewing some other people? Like, is that what they're waiting on? I don't know. It's a little mind-boggling to me, but hopefully we get some more news in the next couple days. So we'll see.
I mean, what are your legitimate thoughts about Brandon Staley, like strictly as a DC? Because like he was a DC for the Rams, right? That's what got him the coaching job at the Chargers. And obviously he was a good DC there, or else teams wouldn't have wanted him to be a head coach. Like,
yeah. I don't know enough. For one, I don't know what he did as assistant head coach this season, even Matt Mayoko is like, yeah, I don't even know. I don't know what he did.
I never heard his name one time all season.
Nobody knows. So how am I supposed to know? And I don't know enough about. I know Rich when it comes to like scheme and stuff. I listen to Rich and things he says. He thought the Staley hire when it first happened was like, oh, like that's good. Like it's a good option. He good scheme and all that. But like, I think because we have no idea what he did this past year and the defense, even with him in the building, managed to look as bad as it did. I think we're all kind of like, is he actually good? So I think that's where we're at. Kyle is probably maybe in the same boat. I think he's smart, right? Like I think Brandon Staley's smart. Like Kyle's mentioned that there's got to be something that he brings to the table, but is that something enough to warrant him being a legitimate DC candidate? I don't think so. Just based on even the way Kyle said it when he was asked, like, are you going to interview Brandon Staley? It didn't seem like he was a legitimate candidate.
Yeah. I heard a couple people, Jesse being one, had brought up Mike Patine. Is that how you say his name? He's the assistant linebacker coach for Minnesota right now. He worked in Cleveland, like with Kyle at one point. I don't know too much about him, but like I hear that's another name now going around. But like you said, we haven't heard no official, other names tied to the 49ers. It's pretty much, just, okay, we're looking at a group of names and like going through, okay, this one might work good. This one might be okay, Right. But yeah, I think we're all under that fear with Saleh that, he either becomes a head coach after 1 year of being here or the 49ers are waiting around and we're going to end up missing out on somebody else because he's becomes a head coach or, whatnot. And it's just like, hope they use this time well. Like you got exited early, now use it to your best advantage. But we'll see. Keep an eye out for any more names. And yeah, obviously OC, we know Clay Kubiak. They did their interview now. Interviewed Iowa State wide receiver, pass game coordinator Noah Pauley as their external interview. So, which was weird, a whole weird situation, but that is what it is. Let's move on. Well, actually, are there any, looking obviously the two biggest moves going into this offseason that, the faithful were banging the table about, we're getting rid of special teams freaking guy, and obviously the DC. Are there any other changes to this coaching staff that you think will happen or that you would like to see happen?
I don't think there's any others that will happen. I think they would have happened already if there were others. I would imagine. I mean, there could be changes in assistant coaches when the DC or special teams coordinator are hired. Maybe they have a preference for who they bring in. But I think aside from that, I think the rest of the team is pretty set. I know a lot of people upset about all the injuries, and anytime there's like an injury riddled year, you want to fire the health and conditioning staff. And I'm not going that far. I think it was just one season. If they had a season like this next year, then we could have that conversation. But no, I think they're okay with where they're at right now.
All right. And it's funny because this is the next name on the list that we're going to. Changing away from coaching and getting into players, and then we'll get into the draft. Looking at Moody and then obviously any other players, but not really. I don't want to pick too much on players that are on their rookie contracts and whatnot, because I think it's only fair to let them, have the time. But when it's somebody like Moody and your team like depends on him for a position like that, it might I don't know that he can be warranted that time that other positions get, right?
Right.
So do you think that the 49ers end up making a change and either strictly get rid of him, bring in competition? Like, how do you think they handle the Moody situation? And do you think any of these kickers that we brought in this season are worth, us keeping around?
Yeah, I think the 49ers more than likely will bring in another kicker or two, in the off season, training camp preseason to essentially compete with Moody and, make that decision then. I think they want to give him that, last chance kind of thing. And the off season is a good time to do that where it's not costing you games, right? So I think
Right.
that's what they'll do. And the easier part about it too is that like whatever special teams coordinator that comes in isn't going to be attached to Jake Moody, right? Like,
True. Yeah.
I mean, Brian Schneider, from everything that was said after that draft, was like he slammed the table for Moody, right?
Yep.
So you're not going to have that from a special teams coordinator that comes in. My concern with bringing competition in for Moody is that I get the sense that Moody is great in practice. He makes his kicks in practice. But it's in games that, his confidence for whatever reason will falter and he'll miss his kicks in like, key moments. So is let's just assume like he has a strong off-season training camp. He's making a lot of his kicks. And when you get into the preseason games, like all those preseason game field goals, enough of a sample size to be like, he's back. Like,
Right.
he's good. That would be my worry that, you get a bit of a false hope with Moody that he's like turned a corner. And maybe he could, right? Like, I'm not saying that he won't. I don't know. But I do think a change of scenery will probably do him better. So there's that possibility. But because I don't think they've made a decision on Jake Moody yet, so though there will be competition and if Moody's less than perfect, I think there you have your excuse, a good reason to move off of him at that point.
It's so weird, because like you said, obviously he's good in practice. You've been there preseason, like, training camp, I should say, like everybody says like he makes his kicks, he's fine. And then all of a sudden we get into the games and like is it a mental thing? Because he was fine in college.
I think it's mental.
That's what got him drafted in this spot, like because he was so good in college. So how did you didn't just forget how to kick? Like you didn't. So what the fuck happened?
It's mental, and I think it's the pressure. Stay faithful. Ty is saying like Moody's injury played a role. Yes, I think so, but he was missing kicks before that. Let's be honest, right?
Like he missed kicks last season.
The injury certainly didn't help, but this has been a thing with him since he got drafted, right? So I think it is certainly a mental battle that he's facing within himself. And that's why I think like a change of scenery is probably the only thing that will help him get out of that, right? And let me see, I was looking at a comment here. Yeah, that Rob D said, listen to Moody's draft. We're talking about
since we drafted him, Ty, not just this season. This has been a thing with Moody since we drafted him. We both just said that. So yell to yourself.
And Rob D said, listen to Moody's draft phone call. They poured the pressure on him instantly. You're gonna tell me that like someone who gets like a kicker who gets drafted in the third round isn't going to be under immense pressure, like right off the freaking bat, and not just a team that gives up a third round pick on you, but a team like the 49ers who had just gone to the Super Bowl. They want to get back there. You're their way to well, I guess they hadn't just gotten the Super Bowl, but like, you know what I mean? When they drafted him, they were still like, this playoff team and with Super Bowl aspirations. So, that was their expectation. And plus, I also think the fact that they had him go through all these tests was like, their way of kind of making sure that he was the right guy. He was unflappable. And so then you end up drafting that guy in the third round, and it's like, damn, like I need to be perfect. Like that's what they're expecting of me, because I passed all these, pre-draft tests and, whatever the hell they had him do, workouts. I did this and that. They drafted me in the third round. Like, yeah, that's a lot of pressure. And it's kind of like, I don't know if you... So there's a show on Netflix about like that's tennis, right? It's called Breakpoint. And like tennis is a very mental game too, because it's just you, right? And if anything is, if you're not right, like mentally, like you can make silly mistakes, right?
Yeah.
Even though like it's a sport you've played since you were like a child and you know how to do all these things, like it's so heavy on the mental aspect of it that it could really hinder your performance. So I see like kicking as very similar, because it is kind of just you, like you're on this team, but like you're the only one that kicks. Like everyone is counting on
all
you,
eyes on you
to make your kicks. So it's the same thing. It's very much, mental. Clearly it's not there. He admitted it too. He admitted it too towards the end of the season. Like, and you can see it. So I kind of feel bad for him, to be honest, because he didn't choose to get drafted in the third round. Like he didn't choose to have all this pressure put on him. I think it was a little unfair, to be honest. But yeah, I think that's definitely played a part in it all.
Sin, like, I don't know, the Chargers would make sense, obviously, because Harbaugh's there, but like I even put that in my notes, like it might be at the point, because I don't want to see this kid's career just like completely go to shit. Like, we know he's a great kicker, right? Like, we've seen it. But maybe it's time, that a change of scenery is what's needed. Maybe going back out there and lining up next to the players that tried to punch you in the face and telling you to lock in, maybe that's not the best thing for you anymore. Like maybe you need off that team with those players that, already feel some type of way about you and have their mind made up about you and already expect you to go out there and miss the freaking kicks because that's what they just watched you do for so long. Like, like it can't be, none of that can be easy. And like you can see when the camera like this, like, and it breaks my heart every single time they put the camera on the kid, like whether it's before a kick, after a kick, at the beginning of a game, he looks like he's just, I don't know, like
that's always kind of just been his face though.
Like, and now they show him so much more, and it's like the whole world now watching, knowing, okay, you're gonna go out there. Is he gonna miss this? Is he gonna make it? Everybody's talking about it, and it's just like then they have his face there on the camera, and you're just like, oh my god. So like I feel it, Sin. I really think he's to the point where he needs that. He looks moody.
My god. Change
more points than Deebo Samuel this season,
which is crazy. And did you also know that Ricky Pearsall had the same amount of touchdowns as Deebo this season?
Sick.
I know.
All right, let's look to the draft. Number 11, Steph. Number 11. Are you going to the Senior Bowl?
I am. I sure am.
Yes.
I'm excited.
All right. So let's start there then. Are there any players, because I've seen and I've been retweeting them. I have Nagy on notifications on. So I get to see all the players as soon as they commit saying they're going to the Senior Bowl. Who should we be looking at in the Senior Bowl, Steph? Who should we keep our eyes out for?
Sure. I have to look at the list, all the lists of players. Yeah. There's been so many players right now that like this is shaping up to be a really great year for the Senior Bowl. I'm trying to see where I could find their list of like, because
I've been seeing a
accepted
lot
invite.
of, I know, the faithful are interested in the trenches. Obviously, we need to beef those up. And there's been a lot of defensive tackles, O-line committing to the Senior Bowl. So
Yeah. This is going to be a really great Senior Bowl for the trenches. Is like what everyone is saying. Okay, I'll go down this list and just like couple guys that
give it to us.
I'm excited to see whether they'll be Niners or a good fit for Niners or not. I'm just going to mention it. So Cam Scattaboo. Love Cam Scattaboo. He's a dog. He's an absolute unit. So I'm excited to see him. Tight end Harold Fannin out of Bowling Green. He should, I'm expecting the 49ers to get a tight end and hopefully a good one. This is looking like a good tight end class as well. Jake Briningstool out of Clemson, another tight end. I'm looking forward to Cam Jackson, defensive lineman from Florida. Let's see here. There's a couple of wide receivers. I know that's not a huge need for the 49ers, or maybe it is, but Chamiri Dyke out of Florida could be an interesting one.
Excuse me?
What did you call me?
Watch your mouth.
It's so unserious. And then let's see. There's a couple of Iowa State guys actually. That will be there. Deion Walker out of Kentucky. Pretty good. Mace. Sorry. Wait. I'm looking at the trenches. There's going to be a number of LSU guys. Mike Green from Marshall. I think a lot of people talking about him being like one of the top edge rushers in the class. So I think definitely excited to watch him in this one. Let's see. So earlier today, I posted about this. The 49ers, or who was it? It was PFF who put out, it wasn't a mock draft. They just put out like one first round prospect that would be a perfect fit for each team, right? So for the 49ers, they gave Ariante Urseri. He's a tackle from Minnesota, so he's going to be there. Gray Zabel out of North Dakota State. He's a dog too. I want to see him go up against like, I think, better talent,
Yeah.
North Dakota State, it's like he was dominating there basically. So I want to see how he does at the Senior Bowl. I think that'll kind of like solidify how the rest of the league views him. Nick Martin, linebacker at Oklahoma State. Let's see here.
Chat. What do you call the sound the goat makes?
Oh my god! Are you doing a giveaway?
Well, we'll see if somebody answers it right or not.
Someone answer it first. There's Josh Connerly, offensive lineman from Oregon. Let's see. Oh, I'm excited to see the wide receiver from Stanford, Alec Ayo Maynor. I don't know if I'm saying his last name correctly, but
from Stanford, huh?
But I've seen a lot of people singing his praises, so I'm looking forward.
So you're gonna have a lot of guys to be keeping an eye on, Steph.
A lot, man. There's always so much to see, and it's a little overwhelming, especially like the first day or so. But I gotta go in with a game plan and a list of guys that I want to focus on. That's what I said, basically. That's what I would call it.
What the hell's a bray? Rod D says bray. I'm gonna bray you upside the head. You guys don't know?
I didn't know before, like shortly before.
I'm so disappointed. You guys aren't goats. You guys are not goats. This chat is not goats today, Steph.
Wow.
All right. Let's look at some other players. Let's talk about pick number 11, Steph.
Yeah.
If you, Steph Sanchez, were the GM of the 49ers and you're on the board at pick 11, are you trading the pick away? Are you drafting? Let's start there.
It's way too early to answer
Now
that.
Rob's
I mean,
calling
like
us asses.
even the 49ers have no idea because you wouldn't make that decision until
You
know
guys cheated at the same freaking time. Look at this. Back to back cheaters.
At the same time. The two who clearly did not know.
Yeah.
Of course, you Googled it. But no, like I think you gotta wait to see who would fall to you at 11. So the bad thing is that this is not going to be there's no way. There's just no.
I think I'm just gonna guess bleat out of my ass. Pull it right out of there.
Was is it that you gotta wait till draft day and the quarterbacks. Like I think there's gonna be a very poor quarterback class, which in turn is gonna have teams looking at either teams earlier than the 49ers, like either looking to trade out or they're just going to go for a completely different position, right? Like they'll, even if they do trade out, the team that's trading up with them will probably go for another position, right? So that means that a lot of guys like Abdul Carter, even Tyler Warren, potentially may not even be available for the 49ers. Ashton Jeanty, like definitely not going to be there. Right. So that's a tough thing. So and it all depends on who the 49ers like. The 49ers are weird with who they like. It's like they don't go with the consensus usually. Mm-hmm. So it's very possible that who they like, they could get at the end of the draft because no other team is, or like, some spots back because no other team is interested in that player at, in that spot. So, they could feel good in knowing they can still get their player and trade back. Which, look, if you can do that, then, more power to you. That's fine because you could probably get, a first-round pick out of it. And, however much, it always costs a lot to move up in the first round. So I would, right now, like I'd say keep the pick and just take the best player available. Like I just think there has to be a good player, at 11. And I don't think you should be, reaching for whatever pick it is you feel you need. I think that's the wrong way to go about it. You just have to go best player available. If that best player does happen to satisfy a need for your team, then great. Like edge, for example, like I feel like there's going to be a number of edges that could be available. There's going to be a number of tackles that could possibly be available there. Right. So I think that's kind of what the 49ers have to decide. I think either one is like I could get excited about, like even if they trade it back, because like I said, I think you can get a pretty decent return. But I still think there'd be someone available there.
So you think, let's say a pick 11, because like you say, we got quarterbacks coming off the board, obviously a running back, would you say what we would probably get like the top two, maybe defensive tackle, like the second best one, like or the third best one got to be available.
Yeah,
right?
I would
like
say
the
for
second
sure.
Or like the third best O lineman got to be available at pick 11. Like you're not going through all those players. Like not everybody can be drafted in 10 picks.
Right.
So we're going to get a hell of a good player right there if the 49ers don't fuck this up.
I think so. I think they could. So I would stay there. And
if you had your choice, are you picking offensive line or D line?
That's tough.
Thinking of our biggest need right now and knowing what our biggest problems were this season.
I'm gonna say defensive line.
And like for an edge opposite Bosa, or
I think edge. Yeah, I mean defensive tackle is a need as well. But I think edge.
I'm with you. I gotta go O-line because, man, I just feel like we could find some guys, and they didn't do a great job of finding them this season, but we've seen them be able to find guys for the D-line. And like the O-line has just been so, oh my God, like just trouble year after year after year after year. And normally the excuse is, well, we're not going to get a top O-lineman where the 49ers are at picking. Well, we can't get a top O-lineman at pick 30, wherever the fuck we at pick 29. Oh, well, we can't get a top O-lineman in the second round. Well, now there's no excuse picking at pick 11. There's no fucking excuse.
Yeah, I mean, I
with
do
two,
think
3 quarterbacks coming off the board, a running back, whatever the hell, you know, like you got to be able to do it.
Yeah, and I think I just like I feel like the 49ers are so picky when it comes to like offensive linemen, especially one that they're getting early, because I think like the expectation is going to be like this is a player that should start day one, like the fan base expectations. We've seen that's not always the case. There were a lot of good offensive linemen last draft that were day one starters, right? And you saw a lot of them were in the first 15 picks. You know, the ones after that, it was like you didn't see a lot of them starting. It was kind of like hit or miss here and there. Even if they did start, you know, were they an offensive lineman that solved all the team's offensive line's problems? Like, I don't think I know of many. So that's the thing. Like, if you're looking for a day one starter that's going to fix all the 49ers problems, like, I just don't know if that's something
one player is going to fix all the problems.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, like, but that's what this fan base wants, basically. And they want like
2 good O-linemen is a lot better than 1 good O-lineman. 3 good O-linemen is a lot better than 1 good O-lineman. Like, we have to start adding good pieces on here. Like, we can't continue to bitch about ass and not put anything better out there. We can't pay Purdy $60 million and have him running for his life and injured in a freaking season. Like, I don't see how we can.
I mean, yeah, I want him to get an offensive lineman for sure, and I think they could.
Because, like, talking about Purdy, let's finish it up with a rumor that's been going around that I saw going around online yesterday, and that was about Purdy's agent reaching out to content creators and 49ers media members to maybe push a narrative on social media, or I'm not sure what they're reaching out for. But shortly before that went out, there was some tweets going out about what they thought Brock Purdy would get paid this season. So let's talk a little bit about those numbers and what you think. The numbers being thrown out there are 5 years, $305 million, $61 million a year, or 6 years, $366 million. Your thoughts on those 2 numbers?
I mean,
which would be setting the market. 61 million. You're the highest paid player in football.
In the market. I could definitely see it going up to that. I could also see it being lower. So not that Tim K like knows everything, but like something he said somewhat recently in one of his podcasts was that like I think that they just want to get over Tua's number, and I'm talking about like Brock and his representation, that they would just want to get above Tua, which is 53 million. So like between, let's just say 55, because I think like the the top end of that is Trevor Lawrence, which is at 55. And there's like three quarterbacks that are getting 55 APY. So I think you're looking at 55 between that and over 60. So like 61, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's like, I could see it being in between any of those numbers, right? Obviously we'd prefer it to be on the lower end of that, right? Like if he got 55 as well. Yeah. But he has every right to ask for more than 55, I think. Like look at Jordan Love and Trevor Lawrence. Like he's done more both individually and as with his team. He's done more than both of those quarterbacks. You can't argue that, right? So, yeah, I think him and his agent are gonna look for more than 55, and whether it goes up to 61, I don't know. I think the 49ers may fight that a little bit, but I just keep going back to the fact that they made Jimmy Garoppolo top of the market after 5 games. Something tells me they don't care that much about resetting the market for a quarterback. So true that. And then, like I always tell people, like, and this goes for any contract, don't pay attention to the initial numbers. Like those only tell. A lot of that is just a bunch of fluff. Like you got to look at how it's structured, and the full details. And that tells you, okay, what they're actually going to be getting, yeah. Like it's hardly ever that a player actually gets the money that his contract says he's going to get. Exactly. Ever. So you always got to pay attention to like the guarantees, things like that. I think that's the biggest thing. And then like the 49ers, the way they structure their contracts, they stagger out the cap hits. They start off low first 2-3 seasons, then they escalate a lot after that, but that's their way of like kicking the can down the road. Yeah, in terms of like the salary cap and all that. So yeah, guess we'll wait and see. Hopefully we see something. I haven't even looked. Are there any other quarterbacks besides obviously like Darnold, like these 1-year guys? But are there any guys that are finishing up their rookie deal that are set to be paid this season? Any other quarterbacks besides Brock? There has to be, right? Somebody that are getting paid this offseason? Mm-hmm. I don't know. Not that I've heard. I mean, I'm sure there are some, right? Like normally you want like him to be paid before somebody else, like yeah. I don't think we have any other like resetting the market type of. I mean, Sam Darnold. Yeah, that's the only. Like, I'll tell you this. I don't want Sam Darnold's deal to happen before Brock's. I don't think Sam Darnold is gonna get up there, but like still, I don't like why even could you imagine if some quarterback hungry team like you don't know that has money goes out and pays him freaking $58 million like it could happen. Sick. I'm just saying I want the 49ers to avoid any situation like that. Yeah. So we need Brock paid fast and early for that reason. We need him paid fast and early for no freaking drama so he can be there working with his guys. Like, I'm looking at the other quarterbacks that are going to be free agents this offseason. So Sam Darnold's, of course, the top. Then it's Russell Wilson. Then it's Justin Fields. And then Daniel Jones. I'd say like those 4 guys, like, they'll be at the top end. And then it's like Sam, if we're putting in tiers, it's like Sam Darnold, then it's like Russell Wilson, then it's like Justin Fields and Daniel Jones, right? So I don't think those will impact Brock as much, but the Sam Darnold one, I just don't. Trey Lance. That. And then who knows what happens with Rodgers or with Kirk Cousins. Neither of those guys are going to get like crazy deals, assuming that I don't know. Somehow Kirk Cousins keeps pulling something out of his ass. Yeah, I don't know how he keeps pulling. His agent is crazy. That agent, whew,
If I was a football player,
Worth
I'd be
every
hiring
penny.
Kirk Cousins' agent.
Worth
I
every
don't
penny.
like.
Do we even
Man,
know? Also, I'm like,
I
Brock's
don't even know who
agent.
it is.
I didn't get hit up. No, nobody hit me up. I just checked my DMs. I didn't get nothing from
know.
Brock's agent. What about me?
They're not hitting up the right people.
What about the little people? I'm just kidding.
They're hitting up the Brock pushers. That's why. If you're not a Brock pusher, you don't get hit up. Steph, what else you got going on this week?
Not too much. I'm gonna do a show tomorrow probably just to give latest updates on all the coaching news and whatnot. But aside from that, not too much going on. Working on my draft sheet, as you know. So make sure you guys check that out if you haven't yet. It's on my Twitter profile. You can find the link to it. It's pinned. So make sure you guys check that out so you can see who the 49ers are interested in so far.
Yep, you got to get with the draft diary, right?
Draft
the draft Bible.
The draft Bible, yeah.
That sheet comes in lots of handy throughout the offseason. So make sure you guys get with it.
Soon, actually tomorrow, I'm gonna have my first prospect interview of the off season, so I'm excited about that. And I'll be doing those from now until like April. So,
are we allowed to know who it is, or
not yet? I'll make people guess online.
That's so rude. You hear that? She said, "You goats don't know the sound of the goat
if I tell you,
not worth it."
if I tell you guys, and then I post like people to guess, one of you is gonna post the answer. Yeah, you're gonna spoil it. I'll trust you.
All right. Well, you gotta find out with general population. All right, Gen Pop. Steph and I will be back next Thursday. Every Thursday, most Thursdays, 3 Pacific time through the off season. So come hang out with us. Have the shows off the rails like this. This is how we do it. So yeah, we appreciate you guys for hanging out with us. Chat, popping per usual. You guys are the best. We appreciate you all. We're out of here. You guys have a safe, wonderful rest of your week and weekend. Peace.
Peace.